Great. Okay, YouTube. Let's get into the Unit 3 element. And what I've done is I've just gone to the template.html that you probably recognize from last week. I've got my HTML5 entries, and I'm kicking off with some HTML. I'm closing my tags, and I've got a basic body, and there's no markup here, and I've got a little script area, and I'm just kind of emptying it out so that you have a little bit of a structure to begin with. You guys could probably craft this right now, but let's just start with a template, nice and easy. And I want to just run through our first demo for Unit 3, where I want to say power yourself to read JSON into your JavaScript. Now, JSON is a big deal. Every time I run into a young person named Jason, I tend to call the person JSON pretty soon after, and they tend to like that, especially if they're in the coding arena. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Let's just say that, and you guys can go over to json.org. And basically, JSON is the best way in the world for Java to talk to C#. JSON is the world's best way for a video game to talk to a website. JSON is the best way to transfer data across the internet between different programming languages. So a bit of Java running on a server could build up a bit of JSON and could send it across the internet to a machine running JavaScript and read JSON nicely. It used to be that we were in a world where XML was extremely important. That's no longer the case, and I just want to. XML was a huge inspiration at the beginning of the century because XML meant that you could send data over the internet, basically, and then it would arrive in a kind of a document. You could unpack the XML, and then it would become variables, and you could begin to program with this data that you write over the internet. I think it was in the era where really cool video games like Doom and that were multiplayer and online wanted a way to send data that was very fast. I think it's really neat when you're in a Minecraft or you're in a 3D world and you see other players running around and you're like, how did that happen? And really one of the big building blocks to the multiplayer internet game is the XML, and you could send a fresh snapshot of where everybody's location is within the game very quickly. And if you're over a broadband edifice, that 56K document is going to move very nicely over a 6 megabyte connection. And so you can receive a fresh copy of where all your competitors are, maybe twice a second, maybe a couple times a second. And if so, you're finding yourself very satisfied by the outcomes. Now, what's cool about XML, and maybe I should try very hard to get an image of XML, is that XML has this cool structured format. And I hope that doesn't hurt your eyes. Maybe I should, those of you who are glass wearers like myself may need to adapt. I see really well, really close up. I don't see so great very far away, so I'll take my glasses off. But you can see that you're saying, okay, I have a little data set of books, and for every book I have an ISBN, I have a title, author, and then I'll begin another book. And you can see that XML kind of has an HTML-like tag, an end tag, and you would send this over the internet, and then your JavaScript would say, okay, cool, I've got some XML, now let's take it apart. Now I've got an array of books, and each book has an ISBN, a title, and an author, and now I can begin to construct a Amazon.com-like page where there's lots of data on every item. So that was a great moment, and I think if you were in the programming milieu, 17 years ago, XML suddenly became a big liberating skill. What happened about 3 years later is that JSON would dominate XML. And I think it'd be really neat if I just had another image of JSON, because the JSON looks a little bit different. Oh, great. We have some EDM JSON. So if you take a look at the JSON here, you realize that the tags surrounding the XML have disappeared. And what we're doing is we're constructing key value pairs. So this is the key: artist is Armin van Buuren, the song is Serenity, the artist description is this, and the song description is this. And so it's kind of an array embedded within this other array of modules. And so that's what JSON looks like. So JSON can travel over the internet using less encoding, less characters than its forebear XML. Therefore, even though XML had great speed and did well for games, which needed a lot of throughput, JSON even had better throughput. And so where we find ourselves is we actually have a more efficient brand of internet data exchange in JSON, or JavaScript object notation. So I invite you to visit json.org and kind of familiarize yourself with the documents there. This is something I've put up in our GitHub so that you receive some background in it. These kind of diagrams are what language designers and compiler developers use. If you're a master of science and computer science, you're busy in making your own languages. Moving forward, if you're going to do a PhD in a major CS program, you're building languages to solve different creative problems. And so you're creating a grammar within your language. And so the core of JSON is you have some key as a string, and then you have some value after it. And you just keep adding that key value pair until you have a data set that moves nicely over the internet. Now, I think in time, a lot of people will say, well, look, we could probably break down the size of a JSON packet the same way that we zip files, the same way that we compress data. So there's a large movement right now going on toward HTML compression, especially where there's a lot of JSON. So don't be surprised if your colleagues are figuring out ways to improve even the acceptable performance of JSON and empower even more data-intensive apps and require you all to have even more broadband. So that's JSON. You can see that the kind of JSON that we're going to work with here is going to look a lot like this. So that's the JSON. So that's the spirit of what we're going after. Now, let me just say this. Today we're going to code some data that looks like this. It's going to be hard. We're going to code it once. You're going to hate it. Maybe if you want, you could copy and paste the JSON from my website into your JavaScript. It makes me think maybe I should do that right now. Just in case. JSON, let me say this. Among programmers, no programmer alive likes to type JSON. It's hard, it's complex, it's very rule-driven, it's very sensitive, and it's very easy to ruin. So let me just prove to you how ugly JSON looks. We'll go to our unit 3 and I'll take a look at, this is the sample that I'm about to code. And I am hamming it up a little bit here, but this is the bit of JSON that I plan to drop into our script here. If that is not unattractive to code, if you like that, then I probably need to shake your hand, and then I need to send you in for a psych evaluation. So never admit that you like to code JSON, because people will think that you need to visit, a psychologist. This is very ugly. Now, some things that you can see here. Now, I was going to code this, and I was very nervous about coding this in front of you. I don't think I'm going to do that. Instead, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening. This is a large array called the employees array. And for every line of JSON that you see here, there's a new key value pair. So the first name is John, the last name is Doe, the first name is Anna, the last name is Smith, etc. And that each of these entries comprise the employees array. You begin it with a bracket and then a single tick, right? A single colon, and then whenever you have a key or value, you have it in double quotes, and then you align these. Instead of an XML tag, you just have the simple semicolon right there, or the colon rather. Now, let me say this. I received a lot of great great questions about the colon in JavaScript, because many of you, have experience in programming languages, and you're used to this, where first name is equal to John, or the first name is equal to Anna. But instead, a JavaScript object goes like this. And so that's a part of the learning curve. So instead of, whenever you see this, just understand that it's an assignment operator, right? There really should be an equal sign there. And that may take place at one point. So, during this video or afterward, you're welcome to just go to my GitHub and plug that in. That's so hard. I remember, frankly, I do a lot of work in iPhone and, the web as well. But in iPhone, you have to code the JSON raw, when you want to send a notification. And you need to send the notification through a notification cloud. And then the JSON is passed over to everybody's phones. And so you need to code a bit of JSON in order to get a notification working. And I just remember working on a couplet of JSON, much like this, for the better part of a week before it started to work, before the notification went out. And so I just have a lot of sympathy for the new generation in learning JSON, because they're going to have to do what we did, which is code this. We cannot remove that ugly fact of history from you. But I do want to say, let's go like this. Let's simplify. One of the rules of JSON is there can't be any white space. It needs to be compressed, and it needs to look a certain way. JavaScript will help you in that when you concatenate these lines using this, it will actually remove any of the white space from it. So at least there's that. So that's me, yada yada. Let me code the rest of this so that you get a sense of where we're going. Now I want to create an object here that uses JavaScript's built-in JSON library, which has the ability to parse the text that we've just built. JSON, this JSON library right here, you realize is a very highly esteemed library. Sorry to take the code away from you. I know you're working hard trying to code this. But you'll see that within JavaScript, JSON is a very important library that comes free whenever you guys start to code JavaScript. So instead of downloading a JSON parser from the internet, which is fine and very technical, and I commend you, but in order to make your code work faster, you're actually going to download nothing. Instead, you're going to use the JSON lib, and then you're going to parse this, whatever this variable is, and that's going to turn it into string variables that'll be very easy for your JavaScript to use. So if I said, well, okay, let's get element by ID, and let's grab a paragraph called demo. So let's create a quick paragraph. And again, you shouldn't rush to try to keep up. If you're a fast person, this is good for you to try to keep up. But I understand that that's hard to do. But I want to get the concept for you guys, so I'm going to move quickly. I don't want to bore you. So what if I were to set the inner HTML of that HTML element to the first item within that employee's array? Now I have my text quite large here, so just understand that I'm kind of invading the next line. And then we'll put a little space in there, and we'll say object.employees, the first index of that for last name. And we'll run this quickly to see that we've got something working for you. This is the crux of what we want to do. Now, what you'll notice right here is you'll say, okay, well, where does employees come from? And you'll remember just a moment ago, we established an array of data called employees right here. I was actually considering being an English major as an undergraduate, and I love to read poetry. I thought poetry had a lot of important systems going on. So I actually think I learned how to code in my poetry class, where you kind of have to understand that there's a reference to a bit of semantic that we've already used. So that employees was established right here within our JSON array. So if you're able to look at the JSON that's coming at you via internet, from the internet or just within your code itself, you know that the beginning of that array is going to be whatever the top level JSON element was. And then, of course, the object is going to be pointing at whatever the parsed value of this nasty string is. And now you can refer to this like you would inside of an array. Now, let me say this. If you guys make yourself, and again, ladies, I hope you don't mind me saying you guys. It's just I don't know where that came from. I suppose I could say you ladies. That would be awesome. Should I do that? That would be a really great. It would be like we're in the Marines, so maybe I should do that. If you just remind me to do that, then it's not a part of my, I think a colleague of mine at another college was criticized for saying you guys the other day. And it's not like we care about being criticized. It'll happen. But it's just kind of amusing. You know what I'm saying? So, but our girls are very resilient, and they don't need to be powder caked. They're good to go. So let me say this. Those of you who've taken a programming class know that arrays are challenging. But also, if you're good with arrays and you like arrays, and if you like for loops, you can be a great programmer. Let me say this. I want to give you confidence that you're probably already a good programmer in everything that's not arrays and for. So if you want to get over the hump in terms of programming, you need to get into for loops, which we're going to talk about today. And then you need to get into arrays, and you need to slay that dragon by programming arrays or for loops during the course of an afternoon. And you say to yourself, look, I want to destroy programming. I want to crush programming. I want to own programming. Okay, here's the way. Sit down and code as many arrays as you can and solve every problem you have using an array and a for loop. And you will be a very competent, employable person, right? Arrays have to do with large collections of data. And that's very important. Large collections of data make you powerful. So people have power over large collections of data. That's a huge advantage, rationale for information systems. But also, if you have the for loop at your command, that means that you can iterate through that large block of data, and that you can provide business, strategic business value in a one fell swoop. So I just want to say that whenever you're a programmer, you always want to kind of push your data into a big array. That's your job in life. And so I want to save this. And then I believe I've stored this on my disk here. And what I might do is I might just create a brand new file, because I now have overwritten my template, which I didn't want to do, but life's good. It's not gonna hurt us. So let's call this unit 3 example 1.html. We'll create that somewhere that's easy to access, and I'll just do away with my template that I love, but and then let's go and run that from a safe location. So you can say, okay, big deal, I've got a word. Okay, I'm like personally exulting. I'm like cheering very quietly that I can see this word. Understanding that if you go back to the first internet pioneers, for them, sending a J between Stanford and Berkeley over the internet, over the telephone line, was a very big victory. If you can take victories in just sending little words over the internet, you're sharing in that early victory of the internet. You're walking their footsteps. So, don't criticize the fact that you're just having one word show up right now. But let's go ahead and say, all right, that's great. That's my demo paragraph. And what I've done is I've grabbed the top level element of that JSON array, this line, John Doe. I've unpacked the first name and the last name inside of my inner HTML, and now I can use that data in a creative way. Okay? And I'm just walking you down a path right now. So what I want you to do is just kind of try this out. And my objective is to teach a concept, is to give you a big idea right now. And then you ladies will fill in all of the, how am I doing? Am I doing good? Is that good? Okay, the young ladies are smiling at me, which I will do what it takes to make that happen. So you ladies get in there and try that, and you'll find that you are taking apart this package of data. Now, folks, as we get into the internet and the cloud, you'll find that Amazon Web Services, the rest of the internet is just sending JSON around. So that if you're comfortable with taking apart a little JSON this week, in 2 weeks you're going to be taking apart the cloud as data is going to be flying to you, and then you're being a web developer. You're using the cloud, you're using data, but I just want you to walk through this very, gradually. There's not a lot of rush, there's not a lot of damage done. So let's do this. The next problem we have to solve is, let's get another div going on up here, and let's build up to the point where, and let's say this is my other div. And let's just call this my other paragraph. Not my other div, but my other paragraph. In this class I talk a lot about divs, and I don't want to unveil that until the time is right. But let's say I have another paragraph here called my other paragraph. Let's get that element by that ID. And then let's set its inner HTML to be object, all the data that's associated with that object. So let's kind of transpose these 3 lines. The object, obj, is a variable that I've established that equates to all the string key value pairs of that JSON package that's parsed, made into an array of strings. And now I'm going to position the value of that into a paragraph above, my other paragraph, what have you. Now I'm just going to run this real quick just to make sure that I'm giving you good code. And you realize that John Doe was just fine, right? The demo element is printing well. But when I go to my other paragraph, the value that's coming off the JSON array is undefined. So if I adjust this just a little bit and say, well, let's go console.log obj.data and just kind of inspect the state of the JSON object. And we do this here, and we'll rerun this. And you take a look at your console, which is kind of the almighty's gift to programmers. Like, the console is a great way to develop because you look at the data before you begin to present it to folks. You realize that your console says, well, your obj.data is undefined. But if you take a look at your obj, that thing is rich. That thing is pregnant with value. But your obj.data is undefined. So what I want to do in the next video is I want to say, well, how can a bright young programmer really begin to get at all the value within a JSON package and kind of put stuff on the screen such as they would see in a Craigslist or in a Facebook or in a in a Google search result, where there's lists, and every part of the list you can do cool things with each part of the list. So I appreciate your excellent attention, and go ahead, take a little break, and we'll check out the next video.